We're going to look next at forgiveness. Forgiveness is what occurs when you're willing to let go of your structures of knowing about another human being. You know, as early as the Bible, we hear, "Forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors." What are we talking about when we're looking at forgiveness and money? Forgiveness occurs when you are willing to let someone else off the hook in life. Forgiveness is not the same as forgetting what they've done. As a matter of fact, it's not advisable for you necessarily to forget when someone's hurt you or done something that you don't like. But there's a difference between forgiving and forgetting. When you forgive another human being, you give up permission to use what they've done as an excuse for your own behavior in life. As a matter of fact, you give up permission to use what other people have done to you or with you as an excuse for you not being successful. When you haven't forgiven someone, you create a structure of knowing about them. We call it a characterization. And this structure of knowing contains all the evidence, all the times in which they've done things you don't like, all your judgments about them, all the things you know about the way they are. And one of the things we know is that it takes a lot of energy to hold these characterizations together. As a matter of fact, as we get older and older and have deeper and deeper characterizations of other people, it could be said that we spend most of our time and energy on these characterizations rather than in having what we truly want in life. And so, since money is one of the forms of energy that we're here to deal with, it would also stand to reason that if you have characterizations of other people, it may tie you up so much that you become unable to use money as energy in the way that you intend to use it. For instance, in the You and Money course, it's very often the case that someone will come and say, well, one of the reasons that I am not a successful business person is because my mother, or you could even say my father, wasn't good at what they did. They didn't teach me how to become good at business, and therefore, because of what they didn't do for me, I am therefore unable to be a good business person myself. While it's true that mom or dad maybe didn't do things that the other person liked, or really did things to hurt their child, nevertheless, what happens when we develop a characterization about that other person is that we begin to ascribe to them the reason for our not being successful in life now. So when you forgive someone, what you do is systematically dismantle your structures of knowing about them and about how what they did injured you or wounded you or hurt you in some way. Now, let's get a little more deeply into this, because I don't want you to hear this in the wrong way. It is possible to injure and hurt other people. But let's take a look at how we form characterizations of people, and I think you'll get an idea of what I'm talking about. Let's say that you're in a relationship with someone, a friend of yours. They come into your home one day. They rush in. They go and knock over one of your favorite sculptures or vases, and they break it. They've done something obviously that you don't like, and something that doesn't need to be forgotten. But you see, what our mind does with that situation is starts to work on it. The mind will say, you know, that person is careless. Not only that, they're unconscious. Look at the way they just rushed into my room and broke my finest piece of art. After doing that, the mind will come up with all examples from the past when the person did the same sort of thing. You see, the mind, once again, wants to collect evidence to prove that its decisions are right. And the difficult thing about it is that the smarter you are, the more insidious, detailed, and unassailable becomes your evidence about the other person. So here you are with you and your friend. You may not have even known that you're collecting evidence about them until something happens again. Let's say they walk into your kitchen, open the refrigerator door, pull out a bottle of milk, and promptly drop it, creating a mess. Monkey mind goes into action again. See? What I said was correct. They really are insensitive, careless, and unconscious. Now, we're looking at a fairly benign situation. What happens when we're with people who are our primary caregivers or people with whom we are raised? In my work with people over the past 15 years, and I've seen thousands of people come through the You and Money course, I have yet to meet one person who doesn't have a characterization about one or both of their primary caregivers. We call these F&M stories, father and mother stories. Now, the point here is not that mom or dad didn't do something to hurt their child. That need not be forgotten. But the point is, what do we do with the knowledge of what the parent did? I remember a man, for instance, who was a dentist, about 46 years old. When he listened to me talking about forgiveness, he said, "But you don't understand. I have a very controlling and domineering mother." And he said, "I don't just have evidence, I'm right. This is not evidence, this is fact. I can point you to the times and the dates and the places in which she tried to control my life. And as a matter of fact, she's been so controlling that it's very hard for me to be in an intimate relationship. Not only that, but in trying to keep away from her being controlling, I've had to go it alone in life. That's one of the reasons I'm in solo practice as a dentist." We began looking at the nature of his characterization of his mother as being controlling and domineering. Other people came up with their father and mother stories, their characterizations of parents as being uncaring, unconscious, mean, self-centered, narcissistic. As a matter of fact, the more sophisticated the people were, the more sophisticated were our characterizations. But one thing started becoming obvious. The more we talked about the characterizations that we had of other people, the more we began to look like the outward expression or the victims of those characterizations. For example, as Paul started talking about his controlling and domineering mother, he visibly started to shrink in our eyes. He hunched over. He had a difficulty breathing. His voice became a little higher as he started saying, "You see, this is the reason why I haven't been successful." In the past, I wouldn't have known what to do with this sort of a thing. As a matter of fact, I might have even gone into agreement or collusion with him. But I was fortunate enough to have worked with a priest by the name of Father Jerry O'Rourke, who calls himself a man of forgiveness and healing. One of the things that Father O'Rourke taught me was that the characterizations we hold about people are very seductive. They may, in fact, have nothing to do with who that actual person is in their heart. True, they did what they did. But it doesn't mean that they are the kind of person that we have made them out to be, and therein lies a very crucial distinction. In working with Father O'Rourke, he gave me 3 questions to ask people in a sort of forgiveness process, which I've adapted for the You and Money course, and we're going to be looking at those questions a little later. You'll even have a chance to answer them if you wish. But forgiveness is the process of letting go of your structures of knowing about another human being. It's a real act of heart and courage. Start looking for yourself at forgiveness by asking the question, who would I need to forgive to have a powerful and constructive relationship with money? Who do I secretly or not so secretly blame for my misfortunes in life? Who do I hold responsible for my money problems? Don't answer me. Resist the temptation to blame yourself or fall into that trap that you've consciously chosen everything that has happened to you. This is not the time to be noble or self-effacing. Just look and see and tell the truth. Get underneath the discomfort and look for yourself. Who do you feel really did you harm? What did he or she do? I remember James. in one of the You and Money courses, saying to me, if my dad wasn't such a bad business person, I would have learned how to run this export business. With him as a role model, no wonder I've made such a terrible mistake. He has really cramped my style. Another woman, Mary Ann, said, my mother was never very independent. She stayed home and took care of us kids. She wasn't enthusiastic about my going to school. I think she was jealous of me. If she'd encouraged me, law school might have been a lot easier for me to get through than the terrible thing it was. A woman named Sharon said, how can I trust anyone? I've just gotten divorced from my husband. He's a playboy and he sees other women on the side. He got us into debt. I'll never let my guard down again. It just hurts too much. My dreams are shattered, maybe forever. Now, these people had plenty of evidence for their assumptions about the other people. As you hear their stories, you might be tempted to agree with them. As a matter of fact, that's one of the things about these structures of knowing or characterizations about other human beings. They're so seductive. It's interesting, too, because this may have happened to you in your life. You know how when you first fall in love and you tell your friends about how wonderful this person is and they become very happy for you, and then you have your first argument with that person, and all the characterizations about them start to rise up, and you start talking with your friends, and because they love you, they begin to agree with you about how inconsiderate the person is, or unconscious, or shallow. And then you go ahead and make up with your loved one again. And you have a great time, and you start feeling great, and you go back to your friends to say, well, we made up and we're back together again. And what your friends are left with are the old characterizations of how you used to feel about that person. And what's one of the first things they say to you? It's usually something like, are you sure you know what you're doing? After all, that person is unconscious. They are shallow. I think you're really going down the wrong track. And they start trying to convince you about why your choice to go back with this person was the wrong one. That is an example of how contagious these characterizations are. We all do this sort of thing, sharing characterizations, whether it's in the coffee room at work, in restaurants, around the kitchen table, Thanksgiving, talking about other members of our family. But let's take a moment and get underneath the mechanism of what's going on. When we look at words such as ruined my hopes, shattered my dreams, cramped my style, jealous and dependent, these are all structures of knowing. They're metaphors that are impregnated with such feeling and energy, judgments and assessments. It's much like that raft experience we talked about earlier. Sometimes our characterizations become so heavy, it's like we're really lugging 10 or 12 on our heads as we're going down our path. Now, characterizations about a person don't change them. On the contrary, the person who's most deeply affected by our characterizations are ourselves. You can logically see that when you attribute your behavior to someone else, and you see them as being the causes of what it is you do. It keeps your own behavior in place. Therefore, the same things tend to happen over and over again to you. I remember a woman named Cheryl saying in the You and Money course, it's going to be a long time before I let anyone get close to me. After the way George treated me, I'll keep my freedom. He left without even telling me. He abandoned me. He just walked out in the middle of the night. He had about as much heart as a lump of coal. I'm not going to let anyone get that close to me again. He taught me a lesson, believe me. I remember a man named Don saying, of course I don't know how to manage money. After all, my dad was a gambler. No, he wasn't a gambler. He was a loser. He spent everything we ever had. The biggest lesson we ever got from him was how to lose money, and that was his gift to me. Your characterizations of another person limit your memory of them. That's because, once again, these characterizations sift out all evidence to the contrary, only leaving in thoughts, feelings, and memories that serve to corroborate what your decision is about that person. How do characterizations form so quickly about another person? They're just a reflex. You can't stop it. But what you can do is recognize when you're characterizing another person. We're now going to do something that's going to prepare you for the forgiveness exercise. It has you take a closer look at your own goals and dreams and how non-forgiveness may have been affecting them over your life. What you're going to need is just 15 minutes of quiet time and a clean piece of paper. Now, during this time, choose a dream or a goal that you haven't attained yet in your life. One you've held on to for a long time, something that's been very important to you. It could be a dream that you've been letting go of because you thought it would never come true. Now, what I'd like you to do is put that dream in the middle of that piece of paper, and using a version of the mind mapping technique that we did for your money structure of knowing, I'd like you to begin going out from that dream, looking at all of the reasons or rationalizations or excuses for why you haven't completed that dream. List all the reasons you can. Do some of the reasons involve your father, your mom, a brother or sister, an ex-mate? Don't worry about being uncharitable. Just be honest. Why haven't you gotten everything you said you've wanted to regarding that dream? What do you feel as you write this? Is there a kind of a heaviness in your chest or gut? Is there a sense of breathing room for you to go any further with this goal or dream? Or do you feel anger or resentment or frustration? No matter how much you try to manage your thoughts or feelings, you'll find when you see that person, they walk into a room or even hear their name, you get this sense, this feeling, this heaviness that you can't control. Ask yourself the question, as you're looking for all these reasons and excuses and you locate some people who you believe are the cause of your distress. If these people were never in my life, would I have really gotten what it is I say I want? Would I be free of all these reasons and excuses? Would I be successful? What would I be doing with my life that I'm not doing now? If you've drawn on that mind map and you don't locate any people who you deem responsible for the condition, look deeper. For example, if you say one of the reasons that I haven't gone to Tahiti is because I don't have enough money, look more deeply under that for the reason why you don't have enough money. What is it that is causing you not to have enough money? You may have to go back 3 or 4 different steps, but I guarantee you will locate one of your final reasons in the personality of another person. Maybe it was that your mom never showed you how to manage money. Maybe it was that your father was stingy with the money that he had. But allow yourself to go back until you locate the person or people who in your heart you really deem responsible for things being the way they are. When you forgive another person, you cease to use what they did as the reason for why your goals and dreams failed to come true. When you forgive them, you waive the right to use what they did, against them or against yourself. Let's go back to Paul, the example of Paul the dentist. As he heard me talk about forgiveness, he became very interested in forgiving his mother. This came about as the result of a parable that we were talking about in the You and Money course. I'd like to present it to you now. Suppose the angel of the Lord came down and visited you one day. And further suppose that you were a parent, you had some children. And the angel said to you, you can only know one of 2 things about your kids. You can't know them both. Just one. You can either know that they love you, or you can know you did a good job with them. They turned out okay. You didn't hurt them. Which one would you want to know? In the You and Money course, some people say, I'd want to know that they love me. But looking at it deeper, they really see that what they really want to know is that they did a good job with their kids, that the kids are fine, that they didn't hurt them or harm them in any way. In working with parents over the past 28 years, I've seen that as a universal truth. Parents give birth to children. One of the reasons is because they want children to love them. But really, when you look underneath at the heart of the matter, all that parents want to know is that their kids turned out all right. Now, what is one thing that we withhold from our parents? Not love, really. Many of us tell our parents that we love them, but the thing that many of us withhold from our parents is the acknowledgement that they did a good job with us. I know that even as you're listening to this, your mind might be coming up with all the times that they didn't do a good job, the troubles you've had with them, the troubles they had with you. But if you'll look for a moment, you'll see that's how it is with human beings in general. We have good times, we have difficult times. There comes a time in all of our lives when we face the possibility of letting go of our F&M stories, our father and mother stories, about the ways in which their parenting damaged us. Now, I know there are many times when they did things that we didn't want them to do, things that need not be forgotten. But I ask you to look in your heart. Are you truly the product of a damaging parent? Look deeply within yourself. Do you love people? Do you have people who love you? Do you have goals and dreams? I've seen some people whose primary caregivers really did not take good care of them. But for the most part, you and I, and so many like us, our parents did a good job with us. No matter how many grievances we have, when we look inside, we can see the truth of it. Now, I ask you to see this too, because if you really do have children, it'll help you develop some compassion for the fact that they may harbor inside of themselves all of their father and mother stories about you. When you see this from a bigger perspective, you see that it's just part of the human condition. One of the effects of having our F&M stories is that we begin to mold our lives as though they are the very reflection of those stories. Getting back to Paul, all his life he had said to people that his mother was smothering. Now, how would you imagine the son of a smothering mother to show up? What would his posture look like? How about his relationships with people? I'll bet you could paint a pretty clear scenario of how the son of a smothering mother would appear in the world. At some point, Paul saw that he was willing to let that story go. Not that he was going to forget some of the difficulties he actually had with his mother, but that he was ready to let go of them and no longer use them as an excuse for himself and how he turned out and his own successes in life. He was no longer willing to use his characterization of his mother as an excuse for his own behavior. Paul did the forgiveness process. At the end of it, he had a sense of energy and a desire to actually go and see his mother and tell her that she had done a good job with him, that all was well. As he left the course that day, he said, "You know, my parents are getting old. I don't want them to die thinking that they left anything wrong with me. I want them to know that all is well." He went down from Sacramento to Los Angeles and he saw his parents. At the time they were in their 70s. He told us that he sat with his mom and looked at her and began talking to her about all the things he had appreciated about how she mothered him, the things she taught him. At some point, he talked about the difficulty that they both had. But he said at the end, "You know, Mom, I want you to know you did a good job with me. I have a wife, I have children, I have a good dental practice, I love people. And I want you to know that all is well. You did a good job." He reported that at that moment his mother burst into tears. She said, "Paul, when you were 5 years old, for some reason you turned away from me. I've been wanting to hear this from you all my life." At that moment, he saw that the woman he had said was smothering was really a woman who was desperate for his love and acknowledgement. He hugged her. He talked with his father for a while. His father, who was moved by the conversation, said, "You know, son, when you were 6 or 8 years old, I got you a toy train for Christmas. I never helped you put it together. That's been bothering me all this time." Imagine, some 40 years. At the end of the visit, Paul left his parents and came back up to Sacramento. 3 weeks later, he died. It was a heart attack, unexpected. No one knew that he was going to pass away. As a matter of fact, the night before he died, he was sitting with a number of us, talking about how wonderful it had been to talk with his parents finally in the way he was talking to them. Even his posture looked different, and the tone of his voice. His death was a shock. And when I went to his memorial service a week later, I saw his parents. They were grief-stricken. You can imagine the pain and the shock and the loss. But there was one thing that was missing. It was remorse. You know, that sense of regret that you hadn't done something the way you had wanted to do in your life? That remorse was missing for them. As a matter of fact, I remember them standing around with a lot of Paul's support group buddies, saying to them, "Paul told us we did a good job with him. He actually said we did a good job." Forgiveness occurs when you are willing to let someone off the hook, to let go of your structures of knowing about them and how they have damaged you. Forgiveness is an act of heart and courage. And if you're willing to do it, we're going to embark upon a forgiveness process right now. What you're going to need for this exercise are some clean pieces of paper in a quiet room. Now, part of this is going to be an eyes-closed process. You'll hear me read it to you when the time is ready. You're going to find that there's a practice effect. And by that I mean, once you've done the forgiveness exercise once, it becomes easier to do it over and over again. Now, for the first part of this process, identify someone who you are clearly ready to forgive. By readiness, I mean, number 1, you're in touch with all your feelings about them, the negative as well as the positive. Sometimes this is hard for us because we want to suppress our negative feelings about another person. But I'd like you to choose as the first person for you to forgive someone about whom you have well-developed judgments and evaluations and assessments. The second is choose someone who it is time for you to forgive. And by this I mean, it may be that you would like to forgive a parent right now, but as you are beginning to learn how to do this forgiveness process, it would be best for you to practice on someone who is not a parent. Maybe someone a little simpler or easier. When you get a feeling of success after doing it that way, you can graduate onto the harder cases after that. The most important thing is that you allow yourself to experience some success in this process. So take a clean piece of paper now and draw an oval-shaped circle that fills the entire sheet. Next, put the person's name on top of the oval. This figure now represents your characterization of that person. Now, with your pen or pencil, what I'd like you to do is fill in the circle with all the thoughts, feelings, judgments, and attitudes you have about this person. Write small if you need to, but put everything into that circle. For example, were they unconscious? dishonest, hypocritical? Where do they drive you and other people crazy with their behavior? What are their character flaws? Take your time and don't leave anything out. Be as picky, unmerciful, and derisive as you like. Someone once asked me, but why should I dredge up all this old stuff? It's painful and I'd rather forget it. The answer I gave them was fairly simple. If you're remembering it right now, it's still there inside of you, festering away. Maybe it's been there for a long time. It needs to be put on that paper where the light of day and the light of your awareness can shine on it. If you see it and acknowledge it, then you can consciously let it go. Trying not to look at it only keeps it around longer. When you deny your grievances, they have a much more profound effect upon you. And the more you try to push them down, the more powerful these grievances become. Now, if you've chosen someone right now to forgive, and you actually did put their name on top of the characterization circle, take a moment, take a deep breath, and realize what a great step you have taken in a healing process, healing your relationship with that person. Now look over what you've written and see if you've left anything else out. Add whatever you see is necessary before you continue. When you've finished, and I hope you have filled this thing up, I hope you've really allowed yourself to cough all of this stuff up on that page. When you have finished, write down "and everything else." It signifies that you're including anything your monkey mind may create in the future. Now in a moment, you're going to hear me ask you 3 questions. Then I'm going to tell you to close your eyes in a moment. But before you do, I want you to know that you might feel a whole variety of emotions as you go through this exercise. This is very, very natural. The emotions that you feel have probably been there for a very long time. Just let them come up. You don't have to do anything with them. Just give yourself room to experience them. Now, before we go on with this process, let me tell you that the answer to these 3 questions are either yes or no. A maybe, I think so, I'll try, or any vague or qualifying answer really counts as a no. It's coming from monkey mind and not who you really are in your heart. Qualifications don't come from your heart. In your heart, out of who you are as a human being, the answer to, am I willing, is either clearly yes or no. Now, be clear that you may authentically answer no to one of these questions, and if you do, know that sometimes it takes just as much courage and heart to give an authentic no as it does an authentic yes. Sometimes you need to have breathing room to say, no, I am not willing to forgive this person, before you can have the space to give an authentic yes. Now, what I'd like you to do is take that characterization sheet and put it on your lap, please. Sit in an upright and yet comfortable position with your arms and legs uncrossed. Put your hands on top of that characterization sheet which you've placed on your lap. As you let your hands rest on that paper, you might be able to feel the energy coming off of that characterization sheet. Now take a deep breath, please. In your mind's eye, place a chair, an empty chair about 3 feet in front of you, facing you. As you see this chair and you, in your mind's eye, look up to the horizon on your right, you may see this person who is here for you to forgive coming towards you. Let them come and sit in the chair in front of you. How do they look as they're doing this? Are there care lines around their face? Do they look weary or wary as they see you? Do they look sad or concerned? Have them sit in the chair in front of you. And as you sit in front of them, feeling the heat from the characterization sheet coming through your hands, you're going to hear me ask you 3 questions, the answers to which are either yes or no. So take another deep breath. If you notice any emotions, any feelings coming up right now, please just allow them to be here. The first question is, looking into this person's face, are you willing to forgive this person totally? By this we mean, are you willing to let go of everything that you have written about them on your characterization sheet, not keeping any part of it for later? Are you willing to let them off that spit that you've had them roasting on? Are you willing to let go of the chains that have bound them to you in this particular way? So looking at this first question, this is very big, because the question is, are you willing to let go of everything that you have written on that characterization sheet, not reserving any for later? Are you willing to forgive this person sitting in front of you totally? Yes or no? Answer silently in your heart. The second question is, are you willing to forgive this person absolutely? And by that we mean, are you willing to give up permission to entertain your best stories and scenarios about that person? You know, the things you say about them again and again, about how they are and how this has affected you. I remember one person saying, well, if I give up my stories and scenarios about my mom, what are me and my sisters going to even talk about around the kitchen table at Thanksgiving? This takes a lot of heart and courage, because these stories and scenarios may have had a lot of juice for you in the past. When you are giving up permission to entertain them, every time you start thinking about these stories or talking about them, you get to interrupt yourself and say, thank you for sharing, monkey mind, but I have already forgiven this person. Because as you're doing this, you're drawing that distinction between who you really are in your heart and your monkey mind. So look with me, please. Are you willing to forgive this person sitting in front of you? Absolutely, yes or no? And now the third question is, are you willing to forgive this person sitting in front of you unconditionally? And by that we mean, are you willing to give up permission to entertain characterizations of them, not just now, but forevermore? You know, one of the things you will notice is that the person may do the same thing that they've always done. Or you may notice that when you think of them, you're tempted to come up with those same characterizations of them. So this question says, are you willing to give up permission to entertain these characterizations about them for now and forevermore? And so as you notice yourself wanting to begin to characterize them again, you'll say to yourself, thank you very much for sharing, monkey mind, but I have already forgiven this person. So look at this third question again. Am I willing to forgive this person unconditionally? Yes or no? Now, whether you've answered yes or no to any of these questions, the fact that you have called this person to you for forgiveness says how willing you are for healing to take place between the two of you. As a matter of fact, whether you said yes or no, your heart is open to them. And what I'd like you to do for the next couple of moments, because your heart is open to this person, tell them from your heart what you know you need to tell them. Are there things that you've never said that you know are there for you to say? This person is there for you right now. So what I'd like you to do is open your heart and just tell them in your mind's eye everything that's there for you to say. Say it all, as though you may never see them again. Good. And now, because this person is sitting in front of you, there just may be some things that they want to tell you from their heart. So leave that little door in front of your heart open for a moment and just be willing to hear what they have to say to you. Give them some room to say what they have to say. Do it now. Listen to them. If there are any questions to which you answered no, but you're now willing to answer yes, allow yourself to do that right now. If not, if the answer is still no, just let it be. You're doing a courageous job in opening your heart to this person. Now in your mind's eye, you might want to reach over and give that person a hug. Is there something else that you need to whisper to them? Say it now. You know, the truth of the matter is that they did the things that they did, and you did the things you did in life. They had their thoughts, and you've had yours, and that's just the way it is between human beings. Just allow yourself to know that all is well, that you're demonstrating courage, and even allowing yourself to be in this process with that person. Now allow that person to stand up and walk away from you in your mind's eye. As they walk away, do you notice that they turn and maybe even wave at you? Do they look different? Does their face look lighter? How do you feel? Just let them disappear over the horizon again. And as they do so, just allow yourself to sit here with your eyes closed. Take another deep breath, please. Would it be all right with you to discover how courageous you are, and that all is well? Now gently open your eyes. Take that piece of paper, that characterization sheet, and tear it up right now. Throw it away. To complete this exercise, you may want to also wash your hands. It symbolizes that you're complete with this process, no matter how you answered the questions. Literally and figuratively, you're washing your hands of it. Learning to forgive is an ability that, with practice, will become easier for you. But be forewarned, one of the double edges of this sword is that you're going to become more and more aware of the people with whom you have characterizations. This awareness will start to stick with you until you act upon it and really heal the relationship you have with people. Now, people often ask, should I tell someone that I have forgiven them? But think about this for a moment. Suppose someone were to come up to you and say, I've just finished this forgiveness process, and I want you to know I forgive you. What's your first response? Usually it's something like, for what? And then you have to bring up everything that you've said you're not going to deal with again. If you really see this, you'll see that forgiveness has to do with you letting go of your characterizations about another human being. That you may not forget what it is that they've done, but you are no longer using it against them or to excuse your lack of success in any area of your life. Now, what does this have to do with your relationship with money? Well, I know on one very practical level, a woman told me of a time in which she had loaned a sister of hers $800. The sister hadn't paid this $800 back in 5 years, and she'd developed all kinds of characterizations about this sister. She said, you know, something weird happened to me after the forgiveness process. I was talking to this very same sister over the phone about 2 weeks later, and halfway through the conversation, my sister said, You know that $800 you loaned me a few years ago? I've been terribly irresponsible. It's time for me to start paying you back." She was flabbergasted. Now, you may see this as some sort of a mystical attainment, that when she forgave her sister, that somehow the universe knew it. I don't know if that's the case, but more pragmatically it may have been that there was no longer that tinge or twinge of judgment in her sister's voice that gave the sister the opportunity to say, "You know, there's something that's not complete between the two of us, and I want to complete it." Either way, what I want you to start looking at now, as we go further in this program, is what are the observations you're discovering about you and your relationship with money as you proceed from this forgiveness process. You have a sense that you may have more energy to actually pursue what it is you want. And in freeing up that energy, you just may allow yourself to have more power in your relationship with money as well. We're getting at the underpinnings of your relationship with energy in general and money specifically. Later on in this program, you're going to be doing more things with money. And I guarantee you, if you do this forgiveness process now, you're going to find an ease and facility that you hadn't had before doing it. Whatever the case, rest easy with this. Try not to come up with too many theories. Just observe, please. You're on a very healing journey, and I guarantee you, you will begin noticing some openings where you had not before.